Okay, let's see if I can get this in because this has a lot to do with translation. So I don't have enough time in here to really expand on all the files. I try and keep my files as small as I can, like I'm speaking to a newborn star, a newborn child, the inner child. But I'm listening to this guy named Dr. Snyder who wrote a book, and it reminded me of I wrote so many from the time I was 4 years of age. I was writing so many books, it's ridiculous. And because I already set the command line authorization that anything that is not what I am, just delete it, burn it off. Okay, and so that allows me to maintain my identity. Okay, which is the eternal spirit of fire, first light. So start with that. So I did go to, I think as I remember, I went to 5 universities because he went to a university. I know how to talk to them because I know how to translate their language and retranslate it into the language of no sound. That's why I went to all those schools. I had to learn their language, how they communicate, how the mind machine communicates to keep killing itself off. Okay. So what I do is the best that I've done with somebody is I was able to, they were able to translate it in less than 5 minutes. Man, fast. That's called a fast translation. That's like snapping the puzzle, like putting that puzzle, that maze together. Wow, now I see how the game is played. Yeah, you don't want to play the game. Learn how to pull a vacuum. Still point them to vacuum. Right. Now there isn't a victim and there isn't a victimizer either. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Now I'm experiencing what I am. Now you're experiencing an eternal engine. Now you're a creative being. That's a living spirit with a living breath. The eternal breath of Kemalowati. The first breath of radiation. The first form and flow of radiation is the first form and flow of water. Love of water. And so he was talking about the book that is written is Tyranny, and I wrote a post in there that you have to include the history of this planet, okay, particularly as it relates to native ancestral spirit, the indigenous people here, the ancient ancestral spiritual teachers, healers, and peacekeepers that are here, okay, and why we're here now, breathing the pure internal, eternal, absolute love energy that goes on forever to restore power. So now you're experiencing more power, which means you don't need them. See, that was the point of all the programming, is to become dependent on the abuser, and that's called a codependent relationship with an abuser. Don't obey the abuser, okay? And what happens? The abuser disappears because they're not giving it any attention anymore, because that's what it's seeking, your attention. That's right. That's the network. All it is a network. All it is a phone. You're not going to find an eternal spirit in a galaxy cell phone, are you? Nope. But there is in the planet. And that's where we get down to the relationships that we have, of how much time we spend, and with who, and why, and how that happens. Yeah, having an intimate, eternal, direct relationship with DC power, DC current, the promised sound and light field. Right? Yep. And what it feels like to be a natural healer wherever you go, which means you don't need a cell phone. All you have to do is just be present with that energy. You don't need an iPad. Okay? You don't need a laptop. Eyes to eyes, soul to soul, star to star, spirit to spirit, essence to essence. Wow. That's right. And they will wake up just like that. just like Misha did. She remembered the one. Now she remembers the eternal Son that loves us all, equally sharing. So when I was a child growing up, that's how you sort of know. As soon as he was starting to relay about energy and sharing energy, and then when he talked about sharing energy and inequality and the wealth inequality in America, when he was talking about MAGA and the Patriots, right? And he was talking about Jefferson and the inequality that the founders all knew this, right? So you have the founder races, and then you have the founders of negative 13, the 13 parasitic colonies. All you have to do is take an aerial view of the grid. The Truman Show model set, the predictive modeling of what was built by battery operated slaves. That's why we're here, restoring memory. And so when I was a child, my mother was a great cook and used a lot of herbal remedies, even though my mother was running programs in the background, running the programs in the background. And that's why I had I've already done videos on what it was like as a child to go to a dinner table. Oh, shit. Excuse my French. I really don't want to eat anything, but I've got to go along with the program. When you're in Rome, do as Romans. Otherwise, you will generate too much. You're way too different. You're way, 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 way too different. Who are you really? Who are you really? Why are you really here? Because you're not running our programs. That's right. And that's like Minority Report. Now, fortunately, in my case, both my biological mother and father are angels. My mother was extremely protective of my energy. My mother knew who I was. Okay? And my father did, but my father was very busy working on X projects. And here's a little side footnote. When footnotes, I went through a lot of their engineering courses about how to write an engineering technical manual to build a holy body. And then creative writing courses. Took a lot of writing courses. I wish I could show you the text that came from a class I took at the University of California, Riverside called the Fog Index, where you take a sentence like an anagram, if you will, like a crossword puzzle, and you break it up as radio frequency, as fire letters, if you will, and say you don't need to spend as much time. It's like taking the APA manual that I had to use when I was in college. It's called a format, a hypertext format. You got to follow the rules, and they're going to get graded on that to see how well you loaded that program into memory, which is the APA manual. Now you're running the APA manual as a program, and now they're going to give you good marks for how well you loaded that program, because now they're experiencing the program that they loaded into their memory. You loaded into your memory, and they're going to grade you on that. Okay. So when you're a creative writer experiencing pure, eternal, absolute love, you're writing a different story than the one they're writing. That's why I went to all their schools. And so that's why I was at the University of Arkansas. I spent 12 years there and ended up with titles, a master's degree. I have a master's degree in education from the University of Arkansas, and I finished a postgraduate course at the University of California, Irvine in genetic environmental engineering, and worked with all the big firms like EG&G, all the folks, Department of Energy folks, Idaho National Engineering Laboratory, MK Fick,